To vote in America, in almost every state, you have to register to vote. And they've been mostly Republican elections officials have been simply crossing people off the voter rolls. It's not small by any means. What's unusual is that this year, last 2 years altogether, are you ready? 16.7 million people removed from the voter rolls. 16.7 million. Now, there's about half of them, there's good reasons, like they died, they moved. We found that over half the people removed have been removed wrongly based on false, phony information. But interestingly, overwhelmingly, these are voters of color, Black voters, Asian American, Hispanic, and by the way, young voters, a lot of students. So you have this massive wipeout of voters, and that's part of the story of this, what may be a rigged election. The reason Georgia is important is that as of this year, it's become a white minority state. It's very hard for the GOP to control it, the Republicans to control that state. So the only way they can do it is by stealing it. We are very concerned that in America, we eliminate voters, especially voters of color, and we don't count a lot of ballots. One of the problems is, and so that's a big problem in America. And so the purge is something I've been investigating first for BBC and The Guardian. That's when I started looking at this business in America of removing voters from the voter rolls. Yeah, you can, if someone dies, they shouldn't be voting, but I don't see zombies at the polls. I'm not too worried about it. But what I'm finding is that it's just a way to attack voters of color. It's a very ugly system. It started in Florida in the year 2000, the Bush-Gore race. The only reason why Bush became president is that the Republican Secretary of State, who's in charge of the voter rolls, who's also running his campaign. Only in America could you have someone in charge of the vote and in charge of a politician's campaign. She was running Bush's campaign, and she removed 58,000 voters, almost all of them African American, therefore Democrats, from the voter rolls before the election. She said, oh, they were felons who in Florida at the time were not allowed to vote if you have a felony conviction. Well, it turns out I got the list for BBC and The Guardian, and I found out that exactly 0 were illegal ex-con voters. And now, so that's how Bush became president. We exposed that. Now it worked, so they just spread the whole concept nationwide. So in Georgia, the ACLU report that I did, we didn't estimate, we actually counted by name and address 198,351 voters wrongly removed from the voter rolls. That swamps any margin of victory Trump may be able to pull out here in Georgia. But then we also have 300,000 removed in Michigan, which again, people are like, how do you end up with Michigan being in play? That is, we don't know who's going to win. Because this is Detroit, Motown, which is an African-American city, is their biggest city by far. And then you also have the United Auto Workers. It's the center of our auto industry and union labor. So how can he possibly win? The answer is by removing 300,000 people he doesn't like from the voter rolls. Taquana Taylor was one of the people who supposedly moved. We went and met with her. They said she moved out of Milwaukee. She's a Milwaukee County supervisor. She runs Milwaukee. And yet they removed her saying she left Milwaukee. This is the crazy stuff. But there, Democrats took control of the Board of Elections and have said, that's it. We're not doing this. They're in court because the GOP says you have to remove these voters. They say, well, you can't remove voters who never moved. But believe it or not, they're in court. The Republicans saying you can't count those the votes from those voters. So, but however, Wisconsin has gone, I'm quite sure, for Biden, because the Democratic officials, the Board of Elections, would not allow these votes, says these voters' votes must count. The supervisor in Milwaukee gets to vote in Milwaukee, her vote will count, and that has put Biden comfortably over the top. Of course, Trump's going to call for recounts, and he's going to scream and holler and stamp his feet, but they've lost that. But, you know, the purge, if it does take Georgia, North Carolina is another bad state. North Carolina, Georgia, Michigan, if these states are taken by Trump, it's because of the purge, not because of the voters.